Hi, Edu family. Let me welcome you to Analysis Thursday. Yes, you got that right. We're still in the month of Joyful Jolly June. And we are here with the bubbly, educated, fun-loving Mrs. Yolande Fyffe Fagan. She is here as our analyzer as we look back at Strategy Sunday when we had Miss Tanisha Thompson, who gave us a very insightful, precise, and um, educated presentation when we looked at how to progress monitor and adjust for instruction within the classroom. And so we're here to analyze the main points. We do know that within our system, we have students who will filter in because of their parents not being able to take them to special schools. And so we're looking at it from an inclusive perspective. How do we progress monitor and how do we adjust for these special needs students that may be in our inclusive classroom? So, Mrs. Yolande Fyffe Fagan, take it away. Let's hear your analysis points for this week. Welcome once more to Strategic Educational Consultancy Services, our wonderful platform where we're empowering educators.
Good night, Eddie family. Mrs. Boswell-Lewis, I thank you once again for the invite. It is awesome to be here another week on your platform to share my views and opinions about our strategic Sunday presentation. Now let's jump right into it. Miss Tanisha Thompson did a wonderful presentation on progress monitoring. The plethora of information that she shared was massive and her presentation was immaculately done. Now, as we think about progress monitoring in our inclusive classrooms, as you said, parents can't afford to give their child private education, so they are mainstreamed with students. So progress monitoring, we look at the progress of our learners. And we know, Eddie family, that when we assess our learners, as Ms. Tanisha said, we use a variety of mediums. We use tests, we use assessments, writing journals, pictorials.
Right.
We use anything that we know that the students can master. So the first thing I want to say that with progress report, the data, since it is that we're looking how applicable it is in the Jamaican setting, in the inclusive classroom setting, the data that is used guides our practice as practitioners for future planning. And when we say future planning, it does not necessarily have to mean the next teaching module. Future planning can mean the day after tomorrow, when it is that we have contact teaching time with our students. Now, progress monitoring is important to both the facilitator and the students because it's all about tracking the growth and achievement of the student and how it is that we as the educator use this information to propel them forward. So she mentioned about achievements, she mentioned how progress monitoring assists in behavioral patterns, behavioral traits. She also mentioned how progress monitoring aids in the student's ability to complete tasks and how progress monitoring helps in developing the learner. Right. Are you still with me, Mrs. Boswell-Lewis?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so she mentioned her IIP, her individual learning profile. And, for your IIP to be successful, especially in an inclusive classroom, you have to firstly and foremostly know what it is that you want the learners to achieve. As since we were picking up from last week's presentation, we know that we want our students to move along the lines of their educational growth, so they can attain mastery level. One thing to add to Ms. Tanisha's presentation was the use of running records, which is, similar to checklists and stuff. So, we tend to use running records as well to monitor the students' progress. No, there's another point also that I wanted to add to the progress monitoring, because the progress monitoring focuses on achievement which we know that is solely based on the national standard curriculum, the content information that
Right.
we want
Yeah.
our students to grasp, right? Their ability, and the ability and the development is the strategies, the list of strategies that she mentioned to get the students actively engaged and learning. What I want to focus a bit on today is the behavioral aspect of progress monitoring. It is, I don't really want to generalize, but I know it is an area of concern for all stakeholders in education. And I'm speaking to classroom control. You know, you have to be a strong
Right.
educator sometimes to just, have a grip on the class, especially when you have different types of learners. And we know what the inclusive classroom is like. So you know that these students,
Yeah.
they need special attention. And in giving them special attention, we don't want to alienate the other students so that they feel neglected, right? So I want to touch a
Right.
bit, excuse me, I want to touch a bit on behavior. So when I listened to her presentation, I was saying that, under behavior, we would encapsulate emotional intelligence, because we know that students,
Right.
they're literary intelligent and they're numerically intelligent. That's the curriculum. So I wanted to dive a bit into the
Yeah.
behavior. How do we monitor behavior, and how do we know when we have made progress with the child's behavior? And then how do we use the improved behavior to support their academic growth? So I was reading an article since recently about emotional intelligence and why it is more important than emotional quotient, IQ, right? So it was made public by Daniel
Actually,
Goldman in 1995, the term emotional intelligence. But you know that previous researchers before the Darwinists and stuff, they would have thought about it. So there was an article that I read from Goldstein in 2017, and he mentioned that in an inclusive classroom, as educators, we have to be cognizant of the behavioral triggers that can bring down the academic growth of our students, right? When we talk about
yes.
emotional triggers, so we're in the inclusive classroom, you know that certain behavior, disruptive behavior, will turn the class topsy-turvy, turn the class upside down, right? Yes, and then everybody goes crazy and wild. Say Mrs. Fyffe Fagan is speaking to Jonathan over here. Jonathan, behave yourself. Akeem acts up because he's like, Jonathan is misbehaving to the class. If I put on the same behavior, I will get the same amount of attention. And that causes havoc in the learning environment. It derails learning. It derails your objectives that you're trying to achieve, and it derails the assessment activities and strategies that you would have implemented to map out your students' learning. No, I'm focusing today on the emotional intelligence because once it is that we have taught our learners the appropriate behavior that is expected in the classroom, I believe everything can go smoothly. You know, as an educator, I remember when I got my first job, they say the first thing that they say to you is when you go to class, you stamp your authority. You've heard that before, right, Mrs. Boswell-Lewis?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
man, you
And
stamp your
usually the students, they tend to test you too, especially if
yes.
you're new, or if like a new set of students, they're meeting you for the first time, you have never taught them before, or they're new coming into the school, they tend to see how far they can go with you. So if you don't set it right your very first class, you're going to lose control as you progress, especially in an inclusive classroom when they may not understand that John behaves this way because he has a specific learning disability.
Learning challenge,
and so everyone
yes.
takes that on and just wants to do. Yeah.
Yes.
Very good, yeah.
As yeah, man, as you they behave like John without knowing that, he has a special need that
Right.
needs
John
to be
has a
catered
need.
to.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, the testing not only goes on the first day, students test you, they put you to the test all throughout the year, right? They tend to do it when
True.
class
Yes.
of the school year, when they believe you're flustered, or at the end of the school year they're like, oh, school are done, miss, not really care, so they put you to the test there. So class control is a must when looking into
Important.
emotional intelligence. And when we I'm sorry for looking down, I'm looking at the people for emotional intelligence, and when we are
Not a
when we
problem.
are
Use your voice.
doing progress
Yes.
monitoring. No, the
Right.
questions that Miss Thompson asked, very important. What do we do with all the information that we have learned, right?
Yes.
She mentioned that we are supposed to use the best approaches to continue to build on the academic acquisition of the learners, their physical development, their
Right.
emotional intelligence. Yes, so it can be both implicit or explicit, as she said. And most importantly, what she mentioned is to be a reflective practitioner. Now, edu family, reflection does not stop at the practitioner. We should encourage our learners to also reflect on their growth. Students love,
True. Yeah.
and you see it mostly at the early childhood level and the primary level of education. As they complete a task, they're so excited. Miss, me finish, just to get that little sticky, just to get
Yeah.
the little thing is the stickers and the little stamps in their book. Yes, so you want them to also, be excited about learning, participate in learning, and when you boost them, they also reflect on their learning. Now, reflection is good. Reflection, okay, I did the work on time, I completed the task, and I was awarded. However, the downside to, let me not say the downside, let me just say an alternative aspect of reflection is that you want students to know that, they should take their time and complete the task. And we see it in our classrooms. They run through the information, throw it on paper, just to be the first one without actually processing the information, right? Now, their emotional intelligence will kick in. I said kick in. Their emotional intelligence
Yeah.
will take
It's fine.
charge, care, right? Yes, Eddie family. I'm trying to not divert from the target language, but we are Jamaican, so I might just code switch every now and then, but I'll try to keep it mainstream. So yes, their emotional intelligence kicks in because you want them to self monitoring. That is the term I should use, the correct term. You want them to self monitor themselves. You want them to pace themselves while completing the activity. And what is also important, edu family, when they self monitor, when they incorporate their critical thinking skill, their emotional intelligence, and they put their academics together, it is there. They will problem solve. They will just need you to monitor and guide them. They will seek out information on their own. Now, edu family, with all of this that said, in the inclusive classroom, we know that theoretical practice is different from in the classroom training. So we might have gone through the theories, we know it. How is it really and truly applicable within the Jamaican classroom? We have to look at time. Time is a factor. Time is good. Also, time can deter from the amount of monitoring, progress monitoring that you want to get done. Remember, our learners with disabilities or special needs children, they need a lot more reinforcement. They need more motivation to get the task done. And they also need that sense of togetherness from the class.
And
I
belonging
did,
too.
Yes, they need to belong. They need to know that they're not alienated or isolated. I remember I was doing when I did a practicum a few years back, I'm not going to mention the name of the school, but it was an inclusive primary school. And what I had noticed at the time, the a few parents, they got persons to sit with their child to do the work for them, to write for them, and do the work. No, it was my class time.
Right.
Remember, I had I would have seen how they functioned in other classes. So it was time for literacy. And I said to the caregiver, why don't you allow her to try? And Mrs. Boswell-Lewis, her response was, me shouldn't have to do it because me I get paid to do it. So I said, I understand, but she's not disabled. She has the same capabilities like all the other students. Allow her to try. And she was a bit,
Right.
she wasn't forthcoming with it because I had to,
Because,
I had to let her know that I'm not overstepping boundary and I'm not undermining your employer's authority, but to let the child try for herself. And I'm telling you, she gave the
yes,
young miss
right.
the pen and she took the whole session. And at the end of the day, she wrote her name in the one class. And I'm like, she can. And the caregiver said she didn't know that she could write. So I said, what do you mean you don't know if she can write? She not do homework and stuff. So she said the parent, like the parent would read to her and she'd give her little responses and they would write for her. And I said to the caregiver, what you should do when we have class, just allow her to try. If it's even a scribble, it is a circle, allow her to try. And I remember my
Right.
assessor came, yes, and she saw her writing. She's like, I didn't know the child could. I'm like, yes, I didn't know she could write either. But I gave her the chance, the opportunity to try for herself.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, from that day, well, I was there for a few weeks. When she went to other classes, she wanted to write on her own. But she can't do the writing, the
Very
maths,
good.
and all the science. But I did say to them, give her the opportunity, the chance to write. Let her feel that she is a part of the class instead of being isolated over there. And when you allow your special learners to feel a part of what is going on, you get
Mhm.
more out of them
Yes,
academically,
from them.
behavior
Mhm.
wise, and um, the other words, sorry, academically, behavior wise, and their achievement growth.
Nice. Okay, great, great. All right. So
So,
in
and
terms of, so you'd have,
mhm,
okay, so you'd have looked at what can we do as we have that data or that information on the student. Now, as it relates to, say, for example, assessment, did I hear you mention that the same line of assessment that Miss Thompson would have suggested that you see where in these are practical as well within the inclusive classroom?
mhm. I got the assessment. I did not hear the last thing you said. Did you say practical? Could you please repeat for me?
Yes, yes. Would that be practical in the inclusive classroom?
The methods of assessment that she mentioned, yes, they are more than practical in the classroom
Yes,
because remember, she mentioned that, sorry, Miss Thompson mentioned that you give assessments based on the child's skill sets. She said you give standardized
yeah,
testing. It can be writing journals, it can be simple drawing, coloring. Did you know that to paste 4 pictures on a piece of paper in sequential order, that is a form of assessment? You target visual
yeah,
learners based on their skill. You target the audio learner, the kinesthetic learner, based on their skill. And in an inclusive classroom, it is always important to focus on strengthening their fine motor skills and motor skills because these are the basis on which
awesome.
their assessment is done, right? Also, there on her slide
Okay,
presentation, she mentioned accept alternative forms of information,
of
pictorials, PowerPoint
assessment, yeah.
presentations. And I really agree with her when she mentioned pairing of students. Miss Thompson, it is something that I do in my class as well. And believe me, EduFamily, it works. I mentioned last week that I have a study that I'm doing with my current form class. I call them 7 Heroic. And I did paired reading with them. Now, paired reading depends on how the educator sees it. Persons do paired reading because of the word paired, you put them together. How I do pair reading is similar to Miss Thompson. With pair students, I pair them 4 different ways. I put 2, am I allowed to say the word weak? Let me use an intellectual word. I put 2 struggling readers. Yes, I put 2 struggling readers together because EduFamily, you do not want to stagnate the growth of your learner. So the 2 struggling readers that you put together, you know that they're at this space and they will move together. The second pairing, you put a struggling reader with an intermediate reader, a struggling reader with a strong reader, an intermediate, or it's 5, an intermediate with an intermediate, and then an intermediate with a strong reader. Now, EduFamily, you will ask, then why should have 5 different groups? Why should I just put all we can read over this, who can read over this, and who just sit and look at the words over this? What you do, you pair them so that they build each other. I would recommend that in an inclusive classroom, your struggling readers, you pair them with stronger readers. The stronger readers, let us be important, because by pairing our students, they can also actively contribute to the educator with progress monitoring. So you would monitor the behavior of the students as they work together. And we know, EduFamily, that we are all big supporters of the constructivist model of learning, where we empower our students to learn on their own and create new knowledge. So by pairing our students, they assist us with progress monitoring. You will see changes in behavior. And I was saying that you can pair your special needs students with a responsible, stronger student who will take their time with the learner and help you as the educator to take the learner slowly but purposefully to their academic destination. Is there any question that you'd like to ask me, Mrs. Boswell-Lewis?
I think you would have covered entirely the presentation and has even given us new information as to how we can look at the pairing for the students and how we can utilize the data gathered to push our students to the academic level that we would want them to be. So I just want to say to you, thank you so much, Mrs. Fyffe Fagan. We call her YX squared, the bubbly YX squared, for bringing us this thorough analysis of the presentation. And EduFamily, we know that for sure that this information is added information that will help us as we close out the school year and we reflect, as we are too, as reflective practitioners, and as we look forward to the new school year. Thank you so much, Mrs. Fyffe Fagan, for being on the platform with us once more in this joyful, jolly month of June. And we will look forward to your analysis next week when we close out. Can you believe it? The month of June is over. When we close out our last, when we close out with our last presentation for the month of June. EduFamily, thank you so much for tuning in, for listening. I know you're going to like, you're going to share, you're going to comment. And for those of you who have not yet subscribed, you are going to subscribe, because this is Strategic Educational Consultancy Services, where our mission always is to empower you educators, that you can also empower the students within your care. Thank you so much, Mrs. YX Square, and we will see you on Thursday again. Thank you, EduFamily. Have a great weekend.
Bye, EduFamily.
All right.